what's really weighing you down? That's the question of this series that Coach Deb Van Dusen and I are exploring. Because, in this day of the TikTok, the Facegram, I just said.
I know, it's all right.
The Facebook, it's like content creators, which are like a lot of health coaches, nutrition coaches, people peddling products, all of that, are giving you 30-second, what they consider like golden nuggets to tell you exactly what you have to do to lose 10 pounds in a week. Or, take these magic hormone drops and boom, lose a half a pound every day. Or, if you do these exercises, I literally had somebody text me and say, do you think this is accurate? And I'm like, have you been following me for any amount of time?
Yeah.
It was this like exercise that was guaranteed to lose 10 pounds in a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it is not ever going to be that quick and simple. I shouldn't say quick and easy, but the solution actually is really simple.
It is.
But it's also multi-layered. And so when we actually think about what's really weighing us down from living our best life, serving our purpose, loving our body, having confidence, all the things that we think that weight on the scale is going to do, there are so many things weighing us down. And that's what this podcast series is all about. Am I right, Deb?
Yes, no, you are. And I think the topic that we're going to address today, it's slightly controversial, but it's an important one for us to discuss because it's one of those things. So I want people to sort of take this from a beginner's mindset and really approach it from like a mindset of curiosity and what could you potentially take away from this and what more research could you do?
So we're gonna hit something hard today that is all based in love, because remember, we work with women and their families every single day for them to love their bodies so they can live their purpose. And we are all about love, compassion, and caring. And we are going to explore the notion that we're going to, how do I say this, Deb? We're going to push on the idea of obesity being a disease. And asking ourselves, is obesity a natural disease, or is it something that we've created and now consider a disease, but is it an artificial disease? And why do you think that's going to some people off, anger some people?
Well, I mean, obesity in general is a sensitive topic. Like when people talk about obesity, there's so much shame around obesity, as we've talked about before. But it's also the fact that, a lot of times people blame the person who's obese for being obese. So there's a lot of blame and shame that go along with this. But we really sort of need to be thinking about, and we had talked about this on our last episode too, where we were talking about like getting at the root cause. So you can't you were talking about your weeds, and you can't just like snip off the top of the weeds. You actually have to pull the root. And so we are going to expose the root on this one, and sort of give you some background and foundation for why it can really actually be considered, something that is human, manufactured by humans.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, when we think about obesity, is like when you think about high cholesterol or high blood pressure, that in and of itself is under the concept of metabolic disease, right? Overall. And arguably, like lifestyle can be like a huge contributor to that. And we know that. But obesity stands alone as this disease. And in some ways, it's almost like you're a victim of obesity. And, and again, we don't want to, this is not about shaming anybody. There's a reason why, and this is what we're going to explore today. We're going to tap into the fact that when Deb and I were younger, when it was the 70s, we didn't have obesity the way we have it now. It has tripled in the last 40 years, and really 30, 40 years. Is that just because everybody just suddenly lost their willpower, or is it just because suddenly now this disease came upon us that made people obese? No.
No.
And what we keep doing right now, because I think this differentiation is so important, because we keep saying obesity is a disease. And so what do we do in medicine 2.0 right now, where we are? We're not in medicine 1.0, where we're trying to like, you don't have antibiotics or anything. Like we're in medicine 2.0, where we have medicine. We need to get to what Dr. Peter Attia says is medicine 3.0, where the onus is really on the patient of doing things that are going to actually serve us, as opposed to medicine 2.0, which is all around medication. Because when we identify obesity as a disease, instead of lifestyle choices, and again, that's going to be controversial, but stand by, we automatically go with medication.
Correct.
And we're going to talk about clients who we have worked with, who came to their doctors, and their doctors automatically said, okay, you have high cholesterol, here's this pill. You're overweight, here's Wegovy. Like, and just going at it with that. And it's not that I'm opposed to medication, but we're acting like it's disease of a victimhood, when it's really, there is something that's going on. And we're going to talk about what's going on in our culture, what's going on in our lives, what's going on with our own choices, that's causing us to be obese. And that is causing metabolic disease. Or it's a symptom of metabolic.
Right, exactly.
It's a symptom. This language is so important, Deb, because if we don't get this language right, we start treating things and going after solutions that are not actually getting to the root cause.
Right. And I think when we, as you talked about medicine 2.0, instead of looking at making really simple lifestyle changes, which is what we work with clients about, and helping them to balance their blood sugar, that can be a dramatic, can make dramatic changes in not only people's blood work, but also in their weight, in their mobility, in everything. Just because when you're sort of getting at the source of metabolic disease, then you can finally sort of treat the patient as a whole, as opposed to just putting Band-Aids on things, which is really what medication does. It's a temporary fix, but you're not actually getting at the root cause. Is it helping to lower your cholesterol? Yes. Is it helping you to eat less? Yes. But what are the long-term consequences? What are the side effects of those? And if you could do those things naturally, wouldn't you want to do that?
Right, with actually nothing but positive side effects and actual longevity. And so it's almost like, so if you were a smoker and you had a cough, right? A cough is a symptom of, let's say you have lung cancer. Okay. So you have lung cancer because you were a smoker and you have a cough. It's like taking a cough drop to deal with the symptom and not actually get to the root cause of what is causing the lung cancer. We need to stop smoking, right? But we give a cough drop and it might lessen the symptoms, but that's not actually going to help us long-term actually get to the root cause. Now, the problem with obesity is that it's not like smoking, because we can stop smoking and live. And actually that's the cure, right? Stop smoking and live, right? Or have a better chance of living. We can't stop eating.
No.
But part of what we have as such a major problem here in this US is that we have, and I will scream this from the rooftops, every nutritionist, every doctor, every dietitian talking about caloric deficits. And what drives me crazy is about that is we keep going after, we have to eat less. We have to eat less. But nobody on earth really understands caloric deficit, because we have no idea how to really measure a caloric output.
No.
Because exercise, calories in, calories out, exercise is 10% of the calories out. Like, you cannot measure calories out effectively. So what is that magic number of a caloric deficit? You don't know it. So we just think it's eat less, eat less, eat less, eat less. And so we have attacked the obesity crisis here with a cough drop, saying, which doesn't actually work. Just eat less food. Well, that's not working. So now we have to have the drug. Well, what if eat less wasn't actually the right move? because A, you can't figure out a caloric deficit, but just the idea, the language, this is why language is so important, of deficit makes you believe. And when your doctor says eat less, move more, less is more. And I have to keep eating less and less and less, and it's miserable. And if anybody ever uses food as part of their culture, if they use food to fill their soul, if they use food as part of fellowship, you're supposed to feel guilty about that. You're not allowed to do that anymore. If you're obese, you're not allowed to have a burger.
Right.
And so no wonder people think, well, my options are eat less and less and less and less, which is actually causing me, which is what people don't understand, to gain weight. Eating less puts my body in stress. So every time I do eat, my body's going to store fat and hold on to it. That's the only other option, or it's weight loss drugs. And so if our society, and again, every nutritionist, Deb, you and I have multiple certifications. Nobody teaches blood sugar stabilization. They all teach caloric deficit.
Right.
It is so frustrating to me because, yeah, I get it. Calories and the energy in food. If you eat too many calories, you can gain weight, but it is such a small mythical part of the whole equation. And it's the only thing people teach. And when that doesn't work, nobody knows what to do.
But the interesting thing is, though, even though they talk about caloric deficit, they'll also talk about eating macronutrients. So there's some level of like awareness that we need like we need a certain amount of macronutrients in every meal in order to sort of like balance everything out.
This, people say it's every day. It's by the day.
Exactly. No, they're doing it by the day rather than how we teach it, which is to balance your blood sugar through, every PFC.
And focusing on every meal. And the other piece of that too is that the idea that we have to put ourselves at this caloric deficit just totally throws out the window the need for blood sugar balance. But yet you could Google anything, anywhere, at any time and see blood sugar balance is essential for every single body. But we get thrown things like have more protein, and you're going to lose weight and you balance your blood sugar. Don't eat carbs. You're going to balance your blood sugar, but carbs give us energy. Like we get thrown all this little stuff by these little Instagram, TikTok things. And then we get more and more confused. And that's why it's like, let's just go with this. I mean, Deb, 73% of adults in the US are overweight. 73%. Most of us, but that has tripled since the 1980s. You just found a very startling statistic on how many people have diabetes.
Yeah. So we have, and it was funny, the way I saw this was I'm driving past a billboard and the billboard said 86 million Americans have prediabetes. Prediabetes. That means they're not yet diabetic. They are somewhere, their A1C is somewhere in that range of being pre-diabetic. But here's the thing, Medicine 2.0 doesn't do anything when somebody's pre-diabetic. They wait until their A1C gets to a certain level before they actually do something. But if you were to do something before your A1C got to a diabetic level, then you would actually be able to circumvent diabetes.
And this is what we don't understand. We like when you're obese or overweight, very likely you're also insulin resistant, pre-diabetic or diabetic. I mean, it's almost always the case. Very few people are able to, like, their body can handle being overweight and not diabetic and have other metabolic disease, because it's not just diabetes, right? But if 86 million people have pre-diabetes, 38, almost 40 million people have diabetes. So just think,
diabetic.
Pre-diabetic people are going to diabetes because the only response that we are given is, well, we'll just have to wait. We'll just have to wait.
We'll wait and see.
So what happens when we wait and see? You will get diabetes. That means those 86 million people that are pre-diabetic are going to be diabetic, because we only work with a very small percentage of those. And we're the people that understand how to actually reverse this without medication. And so think about Ernest. Ernest is somebody that's been with us for 2 years now. His wife signed up to work with us, and he ended up following along because his A1C was so high. He was pre-diabetic, and the doctor just said, you need to eat less and move more. And he said he was trying, he was doing everything the doctor said, and his number kept creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. And then he finally worked with us. By the time he worked with us, he was 345 pounds. His A1C was just right there at the diabetic range. And he just started doing what we said. Within less than 2 months, he had lost 45 pounds, which we don't measure the scale, I don't like to use the scale, but I mean, that's dramatic. And the doctor was like, whoa. And his A1Cs all went down. And that's without medication. The doctor was like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I stopped doing what you told me to do because that wasn't working. That was actually making it worse. And the next step for Ernest would have been Ozempic or Wegovy.
Right.
That's what would have happened. He didn't retire. He was planning on retiring. He didn't retire because he can keep on working. Him and his wife went on their first vacation, and he did it with food. Mary Lynn, who I just interviewed for our podcast, heart attack at 47. All of this is related, right?
Yep.
Got into a deep depression, sadness, ended up gaining a significant amount of weight, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, all the things, goes to her doctor in December of 2023. And her doctor says, here's high cholesterol medication, and here's a prescription for Wegovy. She saw me on a Facebook ad, I don't know, that week, and she did a phone call with us, and she literally ripped up the prescriptions and said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going to try this. She worked with us for 5 weeks, and of course is still part of our membership in our community, because once people are in, they're in, because we want them forever. But within 5 weeks, she had a noticeable decline in everything in terms of her weight, increase in her energy, all of that. She went to her doctor. She literally just went to her doctor. He said, so the cholesterol medication is working. She's like, I never took it. And she never took the Wegovy.
I love that. I love that.
She has lost more weight than she ever thought she would. Plus, all of her blood work is completely normal. If you can, and plus she is confident. She is sure. She's even training to be a certified coach to impact her community. If you could, I mean, if you could bottle that in a drug, Deb, that would fly off the shelves.
But see, here's the thing. And I think what people don't understand or come to realize is not only, so, we've got a lot of things going on. When the body is under stress, we cause inflammation within the body. Inflammation is actually the root cause of a lot of metabolic diseases. And then one of those happens to be being obese and overweight, or overweight and then obese.
Your body will store fat within that inflammation in an effort to protect you.
Inflamed, right? And the reason it's inflamed is because of, and one of the things that we want to do is talk today a little bit about what are the root causes of this to sort of give you a context for where this is coming from. But if you think about probably the number one reason why there is inflammation is because of the type of food that we are eating. And if you are anywhere in the age range of Carrie and myself and grew up in the 70s and 80s, you know that food changed drastically during that time. And there was more salt, more sugar, more fat added to foods. Foods became highly processed because highly processed foods were convenient. They were simple. Who remembers sitting down with a TV tray table and your fancy, TV dinner?
Yeah, you put it in the microwave and then everybody had their meal. It was so easy. And that's how they marketed it too, right?
It was like you can have a family dinner in, 10 minutes.
10 minutes, exactly. And so when we really think about what's weighing us down, first we want to get over the concept of obesity as a disease. When we believe that that's what it is, then we treat things with medication.
Correct.
So we really look at obesity, diabetes, all of these things as a result of certain aspects in a lifestyle, as well as a mindset. Then we start to go after things differently. When we say lifestyle, we know, and this is what bothered me. I was on News Nation probably a year ago or so, and I was with, oh my gosh, what was his name? Leland. I forget his last name. Anyway, a newscaster who was just so appalled that people that are overweight wanted to get, airplane seats that are larger and fighting this body positivity movement. And it was a really hard conversation for me because it was everybody has value. Everybody has value exactly the way they are. And the conversation was around whether or not we should be extending seats in airplanes. I think we should because we're comfortable in general. But
No,
like,
it's about human dignity.
Exactly. Let's talk though about the problem at hand, that 73% of people are obese now. Like, should we just like change all of our airplane seats because of that? I'm not, that's like giving somebody a cough drop. That's not actually getting to the root cause of the problem. And it's not that you aren't good enough as a person that's obese. It's that you are good enough. You are better than a shortened lifespan, because as soon as you're diabetic, you lose 15 years of your life. When you are obese, you lose your quality of life in such a way that that to me is unacceptable. And so it is about recognizing that obesity is one of the symptoms that's telling us you're going to die an early death. And it's not about not caring enough for the person to retrofit all of our planes. It's about caring enough for our society to just stop the madness, because we don't have to retrofit all of our planes if people understood how to bounce their blood sugar through food and how to dig into their thinking a little bit. Because Mary Lynn within 3 months, Ernest within 2 months, Jean within 1 month, when we saw her blood sugar levels were at 400. She was given Wegovy. She tried it. It made her so sick and unfunctioning. It didn't even actually help at all. She didn't lose 1 single pound, which is what we keep talking about, whether it's working, but it didn't change any of her numbers. The doctor was like, you just aren't given enough. And so she was like, I don't want to do this anymore. She found us. Within 2 weeks, her blood sugar levels were down in the 200s. Within 4 weeks, her blood sugars were completely normal. That's eating carbs every single meal. Every single meal 6 times a day. And so if we can do that, do we need to retrofit our airplanes, or do we just need to give people the actual solutions of what's really weighing us down?
But if we gave people the actual solution, that would then, I mean, think about what would happen to the healthcare industry. I mean, the healthcare industry has become, it actually benefits the healthcare industry for people to be sick and for people to get sicker and sicker, because then they're making more money.
Let's not pretend, Deb, that the most successful company right now that has grown more than any other company that is projected to do, I mean, in the billions and billions and billions and billions. People get annoyed with like Jeff Bezos from Amazon because how much money he has and stuff. Ozempic is the largest growing business. Do not think for 1 second that this is about you getting healthier.
No,
it's
not. It's about them making money.
And the fact that you have to be on it forever. And I have a family member who said, I will be on it forever.
Well, and that's their choice. Well, and we had talked
if that's what people are doing, you're putting all the money in their pockets and literally dying an early death.
Well, and suffering through some of the, you know, the side effects that happen with it. Also
just not doing it in a way that your body really wants.
But it's not just that, it's also the quality of food. Like, we talk about the quality of food.
Right.
We have a client now who went from, even though she was eating PFC, she was still eating more processed foods. She suddenly started, and her blood sugar was still spiking.
Let's show that, because
go ahead.
Let's show that slide so that it's in, let's see here. All right. So we see that, because our clients wear continuous glucose monitors, and because that's how confident we are about everything that we do. And
glucose monitors are also a part of medicine 3.0. If you were to put a glucose monitor on the 86 million people who have prediabetes, you would be able to reverse that trend.
Yes, but I will say, as long as they understand what to do with their food. I don't not want anybody going out and just buying a continuous glucose monitor, because you will not understand it. You will think you cannot have certain foods, and it will frustrate you, and it will replace the scale and your obsession around it.
But if you taught people how to use it, that would be a dramatic.
So let's take a look at the client that you were saying. Remind people, and this is part of what's really weighing us down. Processed food industry. The processed food industry has totally bamboozled two major things. One, they put in this salt, sugar, fat, and it's food-like substances. If you actually took the salt, sugar, fat out of processed food, it would taste like cardboard. It would be nothing there. And then the word I can't say, Deb,
Satiated. It ruins our
Satiation.
satiety.
Satiety.
Yeah,
That's the
it
word.
ruins our
Talk
satiety.
about that. What does satiety mean?
So satiety means that you are satisfied. And there's actually a couple of pieces that go into this whole idea of us being satisfied. Number one, when we are eating processed foods are soft, right? So 95% of processed foods have this more like soft texture.
Even if it's a chip.
Right, exactly. Some people refer to it as like baby food for adults. And if you think about it, like some of the stuff that you're buying that's highly processed, yes. But what the highly processed foods do is because they're including salt, sugar, and fat in it, right? There's no place in the world where other than breast milk that has carbs and fat that like naturally go together. Usually you have like protein and fat, and then you've got carbohydrates and fibers and starches and things like that. So when you chew, and you don't have to chew soft foods, but when you actually chew, and one of the things that Johan Hari had talked about in his book was that he had gone to some place and the way that they were going to help him to lose weight was to chew. And he was like, what? And they're like, yes, every piece of food has to be chewed like 50 times or whatever it was. But it truly is, I mean, it is actually, there's been research that's been done on it. So
that's
it's not
also
just
like
that.
one of those things that I was telling you about, like this quick fix thing. Like
Correct.
we're gonna get you to lose weight by like, and people are like, I don't want to do that.
But that was their whole premise. You are just going to chew your food. But honestly, chewing is actually connected to a whole bunch of other things. And there's been a lot of research done on that. But when you chew, you're actually giving because there's a connection between your gut and your brain. And so when you're chewing, you're actually giving your gut enough time to send a message for your brain to receive, for you to be like, okay, I feel satisfied, right? When you're eating highly processed foods, it's so soft that you're just like, and most likely you're hungry because there's a lot of sugar in it. And so it's causing blood sugar spikes. When you get blood sugar spikes, your body has to overcompensate. And so you get these drastic blood sugar drops. And so you constantly feel like you're hungry and you can't get enough food.
But you're not absorbing. There's no nutrients to absorb. So
there's not. It's a chemical, you know what?
Yeah, my brother-in-law wants to eat an entire bag. I'll never forget this. He ate an entire bag of Oreo cookies.
Yeah.
If you can do that, you realize that that's a massive amount of calories. Okay, right? But it's all empty calories. And we're getting no nutrient absorption. And then you're not you're still hungry.
Right.
And that's what I think people don't get. They think that they are obsessed with food. It is a lack of willpower. But a big part of what we're talking about in terms of what's really weighing us down is the processed food industry. And so I'm going to bring up that picture again, because let's talk about this client. So this is her continuous glucose monitor. And her average blood sugar level, now eating in the way that we teach, a protein, fat, and carb every 3 hours, balancing her blood sugar, but it was almost all processed food. It was either protein bars, protein shakes, turkey jerky. Like she was just on the go, like super fast, very quick things, but all processed, right? Look at her average blood sugar level. It was 132. If our average is 80 to 120, I mean, it's not like 400 like Jean's was, but this is her eating PFC balance. So if people are not eating in a way that's balanced, imagine then what it is. This is all processed foods. Her time in range, so the amount of time in a day over the last 7 days that she was in blood sugar kind of homeostasis and balance, was only 38%. So more times than not, she is not in balance. And she is eating in the way that we teach, but she's eating processed foods.
Correct.
Then let's take a look at her blood sugar levels in over 7 days, when 2 weeks later, her coach really talks her through having more whole food, just natural foods. Look at this. Her average, and those of you that are listening to this on the podcast, we're going to talk you through this. Her average blood sugar level was 109, and her average time in range was 81%. Right there, that is going to reverse diabetes. That is going to reverse prediabetes. That is going to, when your blood sugar can be 81% time in range, that's massive. But look at this. Like, this is why this is part of what's weighing us down. We can be eating like in a balanced way or thinking about we're not eating as many calories, but if a lot of our food is processed and then in our certain socioeconomic areas of our country, which where we see the highest rates of obesity is in our cities, they don't have grocery stores, they have convenience stores. What's the only food available at convenience stores?
Right. Highly processed foods. But the other thing too is that there's also fast food in those areas. And if you have to feed a family of 4 and you don't have a lot of money, and this is your option, right? It's getting things off the value menu. But the other thing too is that the food's addictive. So like people think that I have no willpower, but if you're eating highly processed foods, it's actually addictive. So you want to eat more. You want to eat more. You don't feel satisfied. Just like your brother-in-law eating all of the Oreo cookies. Like I am sure probably an hour later after a massive blood sugar crash, he probably then was like, I'm hungry. I got to eat something else.
Exactly.
It's because of all of the chemicals that are in there that make it highly addictive.
And then we think our body's broken, but our body is actually just reacting. Now, with that client we just talked about, can you imagine? Because the majority of people are not eating in a way to balance their blood sugar and they're eating processed food. So that time in range of 38% is probably at like 5 or maybe 10%. Like when we're not keeping our blood sugar balanced, everything else in our body gets screwed up. But what if we get to that root cause and really understand that the cure here is understanding more about food, understanding more about the fact that it might not be your willpower that's out of whack. But then there's also another piece. So what's weighing us down? We know the processed food industry is causing a massive influx in obesity, and we are going after a drug instead of the food manufacturing companies, instead of our education about teaching us how to be able to do this in a way that actually works. Because let's be honest, our clients are massively successful and there's still the processed food industry out there. So while I'd love for them to have higher regulations and for them not to be giving us garbage and showing us or pretending that it's not, our clients are still very successful, even though there is a processed food industry that is out of control. But we also, like, I work out, Deb, every day for an hour, right? I strength train, I do that. But if I am now sitting in my office after that, I am technically living a sedentary lifestyle. And that doesn't equate to the majority of Americans today. If you are moving your body and working out, you're going for a walk, you're going to the gym, but the rest of your day is sitting, that is a sedentary lifestyle. And we have seen a massive influx of that from, I mean, when we think about the last 30 years and how obesity has tripled, that has a huge part of that as well. So it's not always just going to be one thing, but we know movement matters.
It does. Well, and the other thing too about being sedentary is the fact that they create these cushiony chairs, right? Think about the chair in your car that has all of those reclining, features. It's putting your body into unnatural states, which is then also causing joint pain. It's causing back pain. It's causing knee pain. And it's all because we're putting our bodies into unnatural positions. And we're sitting. So we're like locking ourselves in certain positions. So like if you've ever sat for a long car ride and all of a sudden got out of the car and you're like, oh my gosh. Or if you sat on a plane, like things like that. Even when you sit in your desk chair, even though you're paying hundreds of dollars, and in some cases thousands of dollars for these fancy desk chairs, it's not actually doing anything to help you. It's just really hurting or hindering your body. So making sure that you're building movement throughout your day, when they talk about 8 to 10,000 steps every day, like most people aren't getting that. They need to be getting that.
That's why I stand as much as I can. And I sit on the floor a lot too, because if you sit on the floor and then get back up from that matters too. So what's really weighing us down today? Okay, is obesity really the disease, or is it a symptom of a lifestyle that we have fallen victim to without us knowing, and it's unfair, full stop. But now that we know, we can do. So how do we incorporate more whole, unprocessed foods and be more aware of the processed foods that we're eating? How do we recognize that eating a protein, fat, and carb every 3 hours is a good way to start thinking about balancing your blood sugar and getting ourselves from a sedentary lifestyle? We know that there's toxins in the air. And one of the things is like, the creams that we put on our body, the shampoos that we put in our body, all of
Yep.
that, if it's cheap, understand there's a reason why it's cheap. And we have
Correct.
to be thoughtful about that too, because we talk about 1% progress all the time. And all it takes is 1% in the right direction to get you
Yep.
to where you want to go. The
Yep.
problem is we keep going 1% in the wrong direction. And the result is that if 86 million people are pre-diabetic, we are dying off. And we are, I mean, the quality of life when you have diabetes is so poor.
Yep.
It is a terrible way to die.
Yeah.
And we should be just as, like, the fact is cancer comes upon so many of us and we don't know why, but we know why diabetes comes about. And it is just as much of a killer. And it is actually sometimes even worse because it is this long drawn out decline of quality of life that requires everyone else around you to take care of you, and some horrendous side effects. Blindness. 120,000 people had limbs removed last year because of diabetes. Shortening your life. The entire spectrum is so problematic. So we have to be thinking about our processed food. How do we balance our blood sugar with food and PFC3? How are we thinking about movement and actually getting up and not having a sedentary lifestyle? What are we putting on our body, not just in our body?
In our bodies.
And all of this is impacting our gut microbiome. And everything stems from the gut.
It does.
So our gut has actually changed in the last 30 years too. We can see differences in our guts today from our guts 30 years ago. Now, science is a little bit more improved in terms of being able to look at what's going on in our gut microbiome. But we are seeing like plastics, we are seeing toxins, we are seeing chemicals because we are putting that stuff in our body. So there is a lot to this conversation around what's really weighing us down. And if you just keep going after a diet and thinking you have to eat less, you understand you are not actually getting to the root cause, and eating less is going to put your body at a deficit, which causes more disease.
And the other thing too is that what are people eating less of? Because even people who are on weight loss drugs, they might be eating less, but they haven't changed what they're eating. So when they're ordering a big fast food hamburger and eating that, they might not be eating the whole thing. Now they're eating half of it, but it's still all of the salt, sugar, fat that's in it. It's highly processed. There's lots of chemicals in it. It's destroying your microbiome. And so you're not actually making changes that are doing something. So again, when we're taking a drug, we're just masking things as opposed to looking at the root cause. Carrie, one of the other things that I wanted to mention is that client who we showed with the CGM, by her changing, just by changing and eating PFC, she actually drastically reduced her cholesterol. Like dramatic.
Without medication.
Without medication. Decreases in her cholesterol. Yes.
This is what we're saying. Like, why not? Now with Marilyn, this is part of the biggest problem too, bigger problem. And this is part of what's weighing us down as well. Because Mary Lynn couldn't really afford to work with us in the way that she really wanted to, with like really, truly comprehensive personalized coaching and all the bells and whistles. And yet Wegovy was going to be covered by insurance. Her high cholesterol medication was covered by insurance. And our work was not covered by insurance. And she had we worked with her to get creative with her finances so she could do something with us. And it was amazing because the progress has been incredible. But that's what's weighing us down too. When you are faced with a choice of having to pay out of pocket for something like what we do, or have the insurance companies pay for the quick fix that's going to actually likely harm you in the long run and not actually get to the root cause of the problem, it's hard to make that decision because you also want to make sure you're being financially sound. But at the end of the day, if the onus is on us, then what else are we here to invest in if not for the quality of our life to be as long and as purpose driven as possible. But I give her a lot of credit for saying, no, I know that's going to be paid for, but this I know is really what I need. And maybe I need to pay for it so that I actually really do it. But the insurance companies are getting overridden by the cost of Wegovy and Ozempic because it's being covered right now. Imagine when it's not covered anymore. But it is driving our healthcare costs up so much. And guess who is going to pay for everybody? There is a projection that 20% of people are going to be using weight loss drugs in the next few years. Who's paying
Our kids.
that?
Our kids. So when our kids are, you know, full-blown adults and are on their own health insurance, they're going to be paying. Yep. I mean, that's the thing. We have to think about just like not only our own legacy, but like what other legacies are we leaving out there? How are we making this planet a better planet from what we left it as? And one of the other things is that obesity is not a problem in certain parts of the world. And yet they still eat, right? They're eating foods, but it's the types of foods that they're eating.
Japan does not have an obesity problem.
Correct.
So we have to recognize that. Yep. It's not because I want to talk poorly about people who are obese. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. I want every single person to recognize that your value is so big and important that you have to be here for as long as possible. Yep. And by doing something quick or by believing it's your lack of willpower, and if you could just be stronger, which causes depression and a variety, which then causes eating more. It's this horrible cycle that what if it was just because, like, what if a massive reason behind this was because you just didn't know how to fuel your body correctly?
Correct. And if you learned how to fuel your body correctly, how would that make a difference, not only in your life, but also in your family tree?
Exactly. And would we have obesity anymore? No, we wouldn't. So we need to recognize that what's really weighing us down with this episode and all of that, I mean, it's multi-layered. That's why there's so many different episodes in here. You're not going to get us on a 30-second TikTok to be able to tell you the solution because it's so multi-layered. And that's why every single one of these episodes matter as you think through the multiple layers of what's really weighing us down, what's weighing you down, what's weighing this country down, and what we can do to turn it around. So Deb, thank you again for another, hopefully we didn't piss too many people off. I don't think we did.
Well, you know what? Sometimes we got to start the discussion in order to get movements going. And that's what this is going to take. It's going to take enough people getting upset to truly address the root cause of all of this. And when you think about, you know, we need to hold food companies accountable for the ingredients that they're putting in their foods. We need to start reading labels.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And I think it's like, we got to start saying no to our doctors. Like Mary Lynn said no, and did it another way. And then he was like, well, what are you doing? Because I've never seen anybody be able to do this without taking drugs. And so one by one, we can start to do this, but it's going to take you doing it for yourself first and saying, no, I there is another way and I can do it another way. So start thinking about these solutions. Connect with us if you want more information, and we can literally change the way the world looks at food. If you're a health pro and you know that you need to offer a solution like this to your clients, go to mypsc3.com. You can see what we're doing with health pros there. If you are a person that knows you need to figure out the solution, like Mary Lynn, like Ernest, like Jean, go to disruptivenutrition.com/training. And then you can see the training that we do that literally teaches exactly the concepts of what we're talking about today. You'll actually get a download, you'll have activities, and you'll have steps in the right direction. So Deb, thank you for this.
Thank you.
I love doing this with you.
I know.
On the next episode, because there's still
episode.
There's a lot more weighing us down.
There is.
All right. Bye.